Welcome back to the Stronger Combined Results Conference, the first, the last, the completely unique, never to be repeated results conference. We're happy you're here. If you're just tuning in, this is a day-long conference devoted to Stronger Combined, which is a project that supports innovation in mobility in rural, small town, and tourist areas of the North Sea region of Europe. We have had 3 sessions already today. One related to technical solutions, another related to bike sharing solutions and mobility hubs, and then a discussion panel about bike sharing and mobility hubs. Our 4th session will discuss interoperability and multimodal transportation in rural areas. Much of the existing research and commercial activity related to mobility as a service has taken place in large cities, where connectivity is almost natural. That's why cities come to be. You can run into people, you can very easily access services and individuals. So it makes sense that services like mobility as a service would emerge in large city centers. Interoperability in large cities is the low-hanging fruit of multimodal transportation, but in suburbs, small towns, and rural areas, that well-functioning multimodal services can make, but it is suburbs, small towns, and rural areas that well-functioning multimodal services can make the biggest differences by helping populations that are completely dependent on personal motor vehicles, whether they want to be or not. So while big cities might be the low-hanging fruit, helping rural, suburban, and small town contexts abandon the motor vehicle is the real golden goose. Our session will discuss ways that these peripheral contexts have attempted to develop solutions that involve alternatives to single occupancy motor vehicles. If you are in the audience either here in Gothenburg or online somewhere else in the world, you can offer questions at any time in the Zoom chat. You can also interact with us on Mentimeter, which several of you have done before. If you have a smartphone, you can scan this QR code and access Menti with the code that's in the chat and on the screen right now. And we have a question that we want you to answer. And the question is, on its way to the screen, for which user groups of commuters are interoperable solutions most important? And this is a free text answer. Surprise me and tell me for whom interoperable solutions are most important. So we have some eager first responders, commuters and leisure travelers. Yeah, of course, I can imagine in both of these situations, making sure that that you're able to get from one mode of transportation to another is very important. We have students. I'm assuming that because the commuters is a little bit larger, that several people have said commuters, although I don't know how many there are. We'll wait a few more seconds and you can enter in your answers, or maybe everyone has already entered in their answers and everyone just agrees that it's commuters, students, and leisure travelers. Okay. Youth, residents, you have a couple more. Well, great. We're going to dive into interoperability now. I see young people without car. Belgians, right, okay. Great. Let's keep them coming. Meanwhile, I'm going to introduce our first speaker in this session is Dr. Jan Bos, the director at Publiek Vervoer Groninge Drenthe. Jan is one of the actors that has been involved in Stronger Combined from the very beginning and has a challenging task of making a coherent service out of national, provincial, and local services intersecting in one place. The Netherlands is a country that is almost entirely urban, but there are, of course, spaces in the country that are not the Randstad. His presentation is called Experimenting with Ways to Boost Public Transport. So here is Dr. Bos.
Hello.
Hi. I understand you have a very challenging task at your job. involves trying to get a lot of different organizations to work together.
Yes, we work for all the communities, the municipalities in Groningen and Drenthe. That are two provinces in the Netherlands. And at the beginning it were 36, now it are 22. By fusions it gets less, because and that is still a lot of our organizations to get on one line.
Yeah.
And the Public Transport Authority also is involved.
Wow. So who do you like better, Groningen or Drenthe? No, just kidding. You don't have to.
No, don't ask it.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll hear it in your presentation. But the floor is yours, and I'll come back to you with some. Is this yours?
No,
with some challenging questions after your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I want to present to you our pilot on what we call inclusive traveling. And I have to make this. And it is a pilot aiming at a modality shift, and a modality shift from WMO taxis towards buses and trains. In the Netherlands, there are several governmental organizations that organize forms of transport. Our national government is responsible for the trains, our provinces are responsible for buses, and the municipalities are responsible for the WMO taxis. And just to clear out, what is a WMO taxi? A WMO taxi is a form of transport that is meant as a social support due to illness, disabilities, or old age. The municipality decides if you are allowed to use the WMO taxi or not. And if you got a license to use it, then you only pay a little amount of the costs, and the municipality pays the major part of the costs. The pilot I'm talking about is carried out in a context in which the following principles apply. First of all, inclusivity. The policy of the municipalities is focused on how to include special groups in society in a way that they can function as normal as possible, so they can be inclusive in the society. Another principle is sustainability. It's of course also an issue in the Netherlands. And Target Group Transport has made an agreement that there will be a zero emission level in 2027. Efficiency is always an issue. There are always more issues than there is money. Budgets are limited. On the other hand, we did research on how the demand for WMO taxis will develop in the coming years. And we found out that we can expect an increase in demand of 30% within the next 10 years. The main reason herefore is aging. This means that something has to be done. Other way around. What is our pilot about? It's quite simple. We select a group of WMO travelers and give them a free pass so they can use public transport for 6 months without any costs, and we monitor what happens. Is there a decrease in WMO taxi kilometers? Is there a shift to bus or train? Or does nothing happen? Or is there not a shift but just an increase in traveling? And why do they change their behavior? Or don't they change their behavior? The aim, at last, is to boost public transport. Well, the outcome of this pilot is used to advise public transport authorities and municipalities. For the PTAs, it can help to make public transport more attractive for those target groups. And for the municipalities, it can help to select policies that stimulate people to use cheaper, more inclusive and more sustainable forms of transport. For the traveler itself, who depends on the WMO taxi, the advantage can be that the municipality not only gives a license to use the WMO taxi, but also a free pass to use public transport. This gives them more freedom of choice. On a bad day they can use the taxi, and on a good day they can use a bus or train. For the municipality it means also a reduction in costs. For the Public Transport Authority it means more income. So win, win, win. The outcome is also important on the level of the principles that apply. First of all, efficiency. every kilometer with a WMO taxi is 10 times as expensive as a kilometer with public transport. If transport by a WMO taxi is needed, all right, then we have to bear these costs. But if alternative, cheaper mode of transport could apply and could also fit, then we must act on this. The second principle, sustainability. As long as the buses and the trains are not completely full, it is better to use the bus or the train instead of a taxi. On the other hand, if the bus is nearly empty than a taxi, it could be more appropriate to do it the other way around, but that is another discussion. On social inclusion, we expect that one of the outcomes is that social inclusion benefits if WMO travelers would use more public transport, such as buses and trains, instead of the WMO taxi. Now, something about the approach. Municipalities selected 350 WMO travelers, and we provided these WMO travelers with a free pass for public transport for 6 months. This pass has a number, and this number is linked to the specific traveler. With this number, we can link the trips that are being made by train, bus, or taxi to each other, and we can see what has happened. Next to this, each participant has been given a questionnaire. With the questions, we can get, or with the answers on the questions, we can get a picture of why this happened, what has happened. We did not foresee how much time we would need to overcome legal issues. Not only the participants had to agree, but also the carriers, the organizations that manage the databases, the municipalities, etc., etc. There's a never-ending list of people and participants who have to agree. For the calculations, we did use a technique called multiple fractioning computing. I cannot give you the details because I don't know them, but in short, sensitive data is encrypted as the source. It does not leave the original organization, but it is encrypted at the source and always remains encrypted, and with strong GDPR compliance and security advantage. And GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. That means it is safe to do it in this way. Sources therefore can be linked to each other, and analysis can be done without exposing the underlying data to the researchers or the partner organizations. And this did help in getting the legal issues done. So technique can help in these things. How far we are? Now, because of the delays, we are not as far as we wanted, because the quantitative data is not yet processed. It will be 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then they can be processed. People still are traveling, but the questionnaires are already returning, and based on the questionnaires we did receive thus far, the first conclusions can be drawn. From the questionnaires that we received, we concluded that the following issues are important for these special target groups. And this is a first draft, I have to say. Accessibility. Is it easy to get in and out the bus and the train? And what is the walking distance to the stop, to the bus stop? And can you bring a walker? These are important things for our target groups. Reliability plays a role. The public transport timetable is more reliable than the taxi, because the taxi is allowed to arrive 15 minutes before or after the ordered time. Thus the timetable of the public transport helps. Costs are important for the target groups. There are already responses and inquiries that ask for the possibility to provide a reduced subscription for public transport for travelers who are allowed to use the WMO taxi. Thus the costs are also important. And another thing, I put it as hectic. I'm not sure if that is the right word, but some people say that they hesitate to use the bus or the train on rush hours because it is too crowded, or they complain that the acceleration or braking is too fierce. So hectic, they want more easy traveling. Maybe that's a better word. Freedom of choice. The actual health on the day that they want to travel influences choices. And also it is clear that a greater range of movement is appreciated. So if they're feeling good, as we expected, they can use more modes than they are feeling bad. And that's one thing of freedom of choice. They can choose however they feel. And the other thing is that they have a greater range of movement. They can go farther away. Well, as I told you, the final report on this project will be made soon because the quantitative analysis is not concluded yet. And the final report will include these quantitative results as well. We will discuss the outcomes with municipalities and with the Public Transport Authority, what we can learn from the results of this project. We do not know, but we can elaborate it in advice. And this report will also be described in our final overall report. Well, thus far are we with our pilot. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. First, let me ask if there are any questions from the universe. No? I have a quick question. We're already a little behind on time, but it seems to me like you are solving a commons tragedy where you have lots of different municipalities. They all have their own interest, and someone has to be responsible for making sure that the whole system works, and that this is your job, is to try and bring together all these different actors that have their own interests, but it might not always be in their interest to cooperate with everyone, but you have to bring everyone together somehow.
Yes, that's right. And on the other hand, some solutions only work on a higher level when they work together. And no one can put this into work at its own, so they need each other, and therefore they need an organization that travels with them and leads them to these solutions. And
Can you say that they are stronger combined?
They are very stronger if they are combined.
Thanks, Jan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move forward to our next speaker in the interoperability session, and that is Kathy Brown-Stuman. Kathy is a project leader at Energiebyen. I'll let her pronounce that in Danish. Skive. I'll also let her pronounce that in Danish. It's Skive municipality in Denmark. The Skive Living Lab, in my opinion, has been one of the most interesting and inspiring living labs in the Stronger Combined project, in part because they have developed a real mass solution designed for a very small town. The Skive Living Lab is a great example of an experiment that has acknowledged that, for now, the personal motor vehicle is necessary for transportation in the region, but maybe, just maybe, people can be convinced to use their cars a little differently. And so it is my pleasure to introduce a fellow American expatriate, Kathy Brown-Stuman. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Robert.
So you live in Denmark. You've come here for this conference in Sweden. People that aren't from Scandinavia might say, Denmark, Sweden, tomato, tomato. What would you say is the biggest shock to you coming here across the water?
Okay, wasn't prepared for that question. But, it's quite flat in Denmark. So if we should just go from that perspective, that I enjoy the nature in Sweden and the mountains.
Great. Thanks a lot. And we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks. Great, thank you. Which camera am I looking at? This one. Yeah, great. Thanks. And my presentation is coming up now, I believe. Yeah, great. Yes, I'll just say very quickly something about Energiebyen, Skive. That's how we pronounce it. We are a part of Skive municipality, a small project team that works with innovation and development around the green transition in a broad range of projects, both related to citizens, also related to energy issues, agriculture. And so this is one of the projects that we started in 2019. And I came into the project a little bit later on. What we tried to do in Skive is maybe a little bit different than what was in some of the other projects, but some of our results are going to sound a little bit familiar to what you've already heard today. See here. Yes, so I just wanted to show you where is Lime town. This is where we had our project. Lime is a small town in Skive municipality, about 700 year-round residents, where there's also quite large summer population. a lot of summer houses. It's also a beautiful nature area, has a large camping area and close to the water, a harbor not too far away. It has a daycare, but no school anymore. It has a church and a local supermarket, and it also has a quite lively community center in the town. And it's actually the community center that were, the start of our cooperation in the town. If I should say something about the people who live in Skive, we chose Skive partly because they were interested in a cooperation with us. We also chose Skive because we feel, Lime, because we feel that it's representative of many of the towns, the small towns that we have in Skive municipality, in that they're very small. There is a lot of agriculture, so there aren't a lot of large workplaces right there in the area. Many people commute into Skive town or city, which is about 20,000 residents. There's also a significant older population in these cities, and how are people going to be getting around as they get older was also one of the issues we thought about when choosing Lime as sort of a representative town in Skive municipality. So I just wanted to give you all a little bit of a very short glimpse of our process. And we started our discussions with Lime residents regarding the project in December 2020, and then had a kickoff meeting in 2021, although, if everybody remembers back in time, that we were also dealing with Corona at that time, so that, like many of the projects that have been named today, has had an impact in how quickly we were able to get started in Lime. But we had a kickoff meeting anyway. We had an online questionnaire because we didn't do an extensive analysis of Lime in and of itself before we started. We went at it from a grassroots up sort of perspective and see what is it that people who live there, who are experts about their own lives and daily needs and routines, could tell us about how there could be more sustainable mobility options in Lime, especially after looking at Corona and the fall in bus passengers. There's not a big belief that there'll be more buses in Lime, so what can we do to ensure that people can come from point A to point B? We had a number of ways to involve citizens. We had public meetings, we had what we call mobility walks, where people would actually show us where they go in the town, where are the places that are sort of the hot spots in town. And we also had some focus groups where we tried to also include visitors to the area because the summer house population is quite significant as well. And then in June, we had a presentation to the citizens to say, okay, what did you tell us? And to see with them, does that make sense? Did that resonate with what they thought they needed? And so they came up with 5 solutions for greener mobility in Lime. And the one in orange here is highlighted the ride-sharing app. That's what I'm going to speak about for the most part today. But they also pointed toward better information about existing public transit options. They were interested in establishing resource groups, that is, as some other presenters have talked about today, in terms of social inclusion. That can be older people that used to be very active in the local society, but because of maybe some handicap, it's more difficult for them to be involved in the social life of the town. How can we get them more involved in the daily life again? Also improving ride sharing for kids to recreational activities so that the lack of mobility doesn't impact their ability to play soccer or to play handball or whatever it might be. And that's seen as separate from ride sharing because the ride sharing apps that we were discussing, they were all had limits in terms of who could use them. You have to be over 16 years old to be a user in these apps. So we saw that as a separate sort of effort if we would go into that. And then establishing a co-work office where they could work together from home, if you want to say it that way. And the last 3 there that are not in bold font, those are issues that are going to be continued to be looked at by the town of Lime after Stronger Combined project, and they're already starting. So even though we haven't actually worked with those in this pilot, they haven't been lost. So what we did after we presented this at the public meeting, we came back after the summer and started fresh and said, okay, let's get together a working group so we can more clearly define how do we go at this? What do we do? Because we've never done it before. And got a lot of input from them about what kind of recreational associations could be interested in this to help with ride sharing to soccer games or whatever it might be. Also, what kind of businesses are in the area, other people in town that are very engaged in issues. So we could come out and start strong. And then we had a testing of this ride-sharing app, which is called Nabogo. Nabo in Danish means neighbor, so go with your neighbor is the kind of idea. In the 1 year period that we tested the app, you can see the numbers there. We had almost 100 ride-sharing tours. Over 3,000 kilometers were driven, according to through the app, that is. And the average tour was about 35 kilometers. And we've also tried to estimate the CO2 savings there. So that was the last year. Those are sort of the numbers. But what I want to focus mostly on is what have we learned in this process. And I would say it's been a great process because we really didn't know anything about it. We obviously have a lot of good cooperation, but aside from that, we know, and this is not a big surprise, that the success of these kind of ride-sharing programs is about the number of drivers in the beginning, because if you have a lot of drivers, then you have a lot of tours that can be in the system in different routes, and then more people participate because they can see that there's flexibility in the system. Our app provider, Nabogo, had quite an experience with rural areas, and that's part of the reason that we chose them in our procurement process. But we had a little bit of a challenge because the first movers, as they see it, are typically students with their own car, like high school students, gymnasium students, or university. Working age people without kids, because people like me are a nightmare to try to do car ride sharing with, because you got to pick up your kid and you got to do this and you got to do that on your way home from work. And then there are also a lot of people who are in pension that, although not commuters, also have a fair amount of flexibility to drive different routes, or so we thought. We had a little bit of a challenge in our project because not long before we started, our local gymnasium or high school started a commuting app of their own that was only open to students. So we couldn't go, cooperate with them to have that app work in our town, and it took away some of our first movers, and that was really a bit unfortunate. The other issue that we found was that we had some people who wanted to be drivers, but more people wanted to be drivers than to be those that got a ride. And we could have a lot of different theories on, and I'm not exactly sure the reason why, but it was difficult to find the people who were, as I think Marjan said earlier today, are mobility poor, and that they actually need a ride and they don't have 2 to 3 cars in the front yard. These could be students that don't have a car. This could be immigrants that live in the area and work on some of the agricultural farms in the area. And so when you have so if you don't have enough drivers in the start, there's a lack of flexibility, and it kind of creates a difficult process to get it off the ground. But that was a big learning about how we could get started if we were to try to expand this, actually. Our second lesson I've said is that, as Robbie said, we have a very narrow focus in this project, looking at this one sort of little town of 700 year-round residents. And I think in retrospect that maybe the scale isn't quite big enough for really seeing how this can work. Because even if we got everyone in town to be on this app, it would still only be 700 people. We did end up with about, I think it was about 83 users of the app, and most of them are from this area in the year that we did the pilot. So there were people interested, over 10, almost 15%. But I think we need to try it at a larger scale. And fortunately, we are in a process of discussing the idea of having a shared ride-sharing app in cooperation with our regional transit authority and 5 other municipalities in our region. So we'll see how it works at a larger scale, hopefully soon. One of the most important things, and this comes to what Jan just said about social inclusion, is that what we found is that ride sharing in rural areas is more than about getting from A to B. It's more than just getting on the subway stop at this spot and then getting off. It's often about helping your neighbor, building relationships, and to some extent, this town is also sort of a, what do we want to say, climate conscious sort of town. And there was sort of this real desire to actually focus on the green mobility part of this project. Most families have 2 to 3 vehicles. We don't feel that economics was a real driver for using the rideshare app, though we did see an increase in our number of tours, particularly in February and March this year, and that's when the prices really went up with gas prices for cars because of the war in Ukraine. So, but that impact seemed to fall off after March. So we don't have all our results yet, but I thought that was quite interesting. Most of the people we talked to said, yeah, I'd be willing to go out of my way to help someone get into town. So there is a social exchange there, and I think that gives some kind of options for ride sharing that are different than in a city where maybe you're a little bit more anonymous. In the countryside, everybody knows each other and they want to help each other out. And that probably there's a lot of ride sharing that happens that wasn't in the app. It was there before and it's there now. So it's not to say nobody is carpooling out in this area, but that they weren't doing it through the app necessarily. And then the last point is something that's also been said today, that local, a local anchor for the project is really important. That is a really handheld process. We have a lot of older people that live in this town, and they're probably better at apps than I am, most of them, but still changing a behavior takes a lot of time. It's a handheld process. And my office is 20 minutes away by car. Our app provider is not a local, doesn't have a local daily presence. And our best success came through having local ambassadors in our working group that were out and helping people and seeing them in the supermarket and say, hey, have you tried that? Have you tried the app? Or do you need help with it? Come by my place and we can check it out. I think that's a very important point with behavior change. There needs to be a very local presence, throughout the time, all the time, until things really get going. And that's something that we'll have in mind if we end up scaling up this ride-sharing process in other small towns. So that's a little bit of a summation of what we've been doing in Lima.
Thank you so much. Very, very exciting, very interesting. My first question to you, Kathy, is what are the hotspots of Lima?
Well, there is a hotspot in every town, I would say.
Okay.
The hotspot is really, I would say it's the local supermarket, which is conveniently located right across the street from the community center, which shares a parking lot with the childcare center. That's like the hub, I guess. If we were to make a sticky hub at some point, it would be somewhere there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you noticed, or do you have any way to know whether this location has been useful as a gathering point for picking up neighbors at all?
I mean, in the app you have, I can't remember what it's called, but you have like a ride-sharing pickups, hotspots, or I can't remember exactly what it's called.
Oh, okay.
But so there you can see those in the app, and the supermarket is one of them, because we also want to choose places where you can actually park your car, and it's not going to get towed while you go to work and come back for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where their points of departure were to and from at this point, but I would guess a lot of them were from that little nexus.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know that for ride-hailing apps, these kinds of services, that there are certain standards that the drivers have to follow. They have to keep their car clean. They have to, actually really high standards. They have to have a car model from a certain era.
Okay.
And I would imagine too, that they would have to have, seat belts that work, brakes that work. I'm wondering, does Neighbogo have any kind of requirements that your car is like safe at a bare minimum level?
Bare minimum. I'm not aware that there are. Each driver has to have a profile where they say something about themselves and put up a picture to make sure this is a real person.
Yeah.
So there is something there, and you can give sort of a review of your tour, I believe. So maybe that's a way to sort of account for that. But I don't think there's any rules about cleanliness. I think they can put in, the drivers themselves can put in sort of information like, I like to listen to music when I drive, or I tend to be quiet when I drive. So there's a little bit of helping with expectations on both sides. And there's also, the driver doesn't always have to accept the ride. So somebody sends a wish for a ride, and if it's like, oh, I know, I know
that person.
Yeah, or maybe it's just, I don't know what the reason would be that you say no, but
I'm in a hurry today.
Yeah, or maybe my plans have changed, or whatever it might be. Sure. So you don't always have to accept. So there's always a little bit of a process to whether you accept that somebody wants to have that ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one last thing, I know that this service is integrated into the regional mobility app.
Yeah.
The national mobility app, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I did forget to mention that, so that's really
that's
good.
An exciting thing. I think.
It is, and that's one of the reasons that was also an attractive ride-sharing provider to choose for this project, because we were hoping to have more of a coupling between like the last mile concepts, but that people would maybe use the app to come into Skive town, like the city, and then maybe take a train from there. We didn't see that multimodality, and I don't know if that has something to do with, we were right after COVID, so maybe people were still avoiding public transit. It's kind of hard to know, but I anticipate, and I think we'll have more focus on that aspect of it if this becomes scaled up in cooperation with other municipalities.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. Great. We need to move forward.
Thanks.
But thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Now we're going to move on to our third and final speaker in this session. We will hear from Ranald Robertson, who is joining us on Zoom from Inverness, Scotland. Ronald is the Partnership Director at the Highlands and Islands Transport Partnerships, or HiTrans. His presentation is called Insight from the Go-Hi MaaS project. Hello, Ronald. It looks like you're sitting up in a tower overlooking the Highlands and Islands.
I thought I'd have a bit of an image of a backdrop that showcased the region a little if I don't manage to present it very well, Robbie. I've actually got my childhood home behind me in that photo.
I was going to ask, what is that? What city or town is that?
It's a village of Lochmaddy in the island of North Uist in the Outer Hebrides, so in far northwest of Scotland. So I noticed that we haven't heard from the moderator on who was successful at the go-karting last night, so thinking that Dr. Saracini might have been a more likely winner than you, Robbie. Is that right?
Oh, we don't need to talk about that. Yes, there was a fierce go-karting competition, and the results of the go-karting competition will be revealed at a later portion of this results conference. It is an important result in the Stronger Combined project.
Very good. Well, I'll crack on while Robbie. I'm conscious of the time that I'm eating into by waffling away here.
Okay, Ronald, we're excited for your presentation. Please go ahead and let us know about the Go-Hi project.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to share some insights from the Go-Hi MaaS project, which has been delivered, as I mentioned, in the Highlands and Islands. Sorry, okay, so Stronger Combined has been a major feature in HiTrans' ability to deliver the Go-Hi project. The project has allowed us to improve mobility modes and services in our region, as we heard from my colleague Vicky earlier on today. It's allowed us to manage the delivery of our MaaS activities and to effectively market the platform since we launched. Transports and experience in the Highlands and Islands. My own organisation covers it's a large geography covered by HiTrans. We are 5 local authority areas. These are Nehalinian and Year, Orkney, Highland, Murray, and most of the Argyll and Bute area. It represents about 40% of Scotland's landmass, but is only home to 10% of the population. And in geographic terms, it's only slightly smaller than the geography of the Netherlands, but it only houses about 3% of the population of the Netherlands to present what we're dealing with. But we believe that travelling around our region should be an enjoyable experience, and why not when there are such iconic experiences on offer in our region as we see in these images that include travelling in Harry Potter's footsteps on the Hogwarts Express, or the Jacobite steam train as it's really known, or by flying on Loganair's twin otter aircraft to land at the beach at Tribor and Barra, which is a unique opportunity in commercial aviation. The challenge we set our technical partners, Pod Mobility Group, whose Mobilio platform powers our Go-Hi app, was a difficult one. It largely related to our large region and some of the challenges around that. We asked them to build a platform in every part of our region. We asked them to try to onboard as many operators as possible. We set them an initial challenge of 18 bus operators that we wanted included. We have some slightly different challenges in that ferry services and air services are particularly important in our region as we look to take people to and from 60 inhabited islands. And within ferry, there are some other unique challenges like having to book cabins and apply discounts for local residents as well. And that meant that Mobilio had to have new UI developed to accommodate some of these more challenging aspects of traveling around our area. Go-Hi launched in 2021, delivering what we set out to do, a region-wide multimodal journey planning system, using real-time data, offering account-based payment to all users. The benefits of the platform include raising awareness of sustainable and active travel choices. And as my colleague Vicky's covered earlier, through Stronger Combined, we were able to introduce a public e-bike dock system in Inverness, which is bookable through Go-Hi. The e-bike share scheme is supplied and operated by Wagon. I won't go into too much detail about HiBike, that as Vicky covered earlier, that launched in 2021, initially on 3 physical and 3 virtual docks, but that's now become 6 physical docks, and it's been extended to the town of Fort William. After an initial launch with a good amount of marketing, we were able to realise about 1,500 unique downloads today of the Go-Hi app. As a project team, we faced a number of challenges in the provision of digital services. And to address those challenges, we're lucky to have a diverse and deep skill sets across a large multidisciplinary team. In terms of the key target audiences post-launch for Go-Hi, our marketing has consisted of looking to work with existing registered Go-Hi users, residents currently using their own cars to travel around the region, residents currently using multiple transport options to get around, business travellers and tourists travelling to and around our region. This activity has been supported by our website, which is used to provide detailed information on the app. We've also focused marketing efforts on developing awareness through operator marketing, such as newsletters and social media. And we currently have a live promotion as an example of that offers a 10% discount if you're travelling on a Stagecoach bus and you're booking that service through the app. To raise awareness with visitors, we've posted travel blogs on the website, and we've worked with travel bloggers to develop video content and placed advertising on local destination marketing organisation websites. To capture learning and insight from Go-Hi and ensure we improve the functionality for the user, Pod Mobility Group and Leeds University have developed an approach that will gather data and evidence from users, the start before the app launched with background surveys, advertised through social media and through focus group exercises. Our initial background survey was completed, and that helped move us towards early downloads, with early adopters of the app sent this survey. And to try and boost the return rate of the survey, we offered prizes that were then awarded through a prize draw. The diagram in the slide sets out the flow of the baseline evidence base, which targets a range of different app users, with the user brackets being residents, business users, and tourists. Residents and regular users will be approached for a during and after survey. The primary sample for this type of data capture will be our larger settlements in Inverness and Elgin. Business user surveying will be developed as we onboard more businesses to plan their staff travel through Go-Hi. And tourist experiences will be captured through a single evaluation, but also through any insights we can gather through the app UX. Like we've heard already, I think some of the early insights that we have would be that technology alone is not the answer. For the MaaS platform itself is a welcome development, and it can ease the planning and booking of travel, and this in turn will help encourage, we believe, some travel behaviour change to be realised. However, we need to ensure that the transport alternatives are good and that the journey experience is positive. for users. I think that's been a real feature of Stronger Combined, the fact that we've been able to address what we've felt were gaps in the mobility choices available in our region. For Go-Hi, we continue to focus marketing on increasing engagement and use by those who have already downloaded the app. But we know that if MaaS is going to become a self-sustaining intervention, we do need to have a regular and growing user base. Quickly turning to future phases of our development, as a new product, we see Go-Hi being at the start of its own journey. And to ensure it remains fit for purpose, we need to keep building on that. So we were pleased to receive some further support from the Scottish Government to do that. So we are looking to now take forward a similar approach to that we followed for e-bikes, to fully onboard a wide range of on-demand transport services through the development of a standalone DRT booking app that will be integrated into Go-Hi. That app has now launched as well just last month. It's called Move Flexi, and we hope to have it onboarded into Go-Hi early in the new year. We're building on our public e-bike dock and folding bike options, with 6 more e-bike docks to be introduced in Inverness early in 2023, and a further Brompton folding bike dock to be introduced, on building on the 3 we already have at Elgin, Inverness and Oban, and the new dock will be in Stornoway in the Western Isles. We are also looking to introduce 6 new e-car club locations across the region to strengthen our mobility hub offer, and to try and incentivise users of the app. We are working to integrate a product called Travel Perks, which will see spend in the local retail and food economy rewarded by a travel credit in Go-Hi. So we're hopefully not standing still. We've also integrated Scotland's first autonomous vehicle service into the app, which has been live since earlier this year, linking the Inverness campus with an Inverness retail and business park. More needs to be done in marketing, and we're currently looking to repeat the advertising that saw us launch the app in 2021, which we hope to complete over the coming months in the run up to the festive period, where we should be promoting sustainable travel. That finishes off everything I had to say today. You'll probably be glad to know, but I'm hoping the technology will bear with us and allow a video to play that I've shared with colleagues earlier.
Planning your trip within the Highlands and Islands couldn't be easier than with the Go-Hi app. Simply, it takes the hassle out of travel. Just enter your start and end destinations and let the app do the rest. With access to transport services throughout the region, the app provides you with a detailed end-to-end journey solution at the touch of a button. From bike, bus, train, car to plane and ferry, Go-Hi is a great way to plan your door-to-door travel to and around the Highlands and Islands. Go-Hi, Highlands and Islands travel made simple.
Thanks so much, Ronald. We are a little bit short on time, but and I want to ask one question. From what you observe, what is the most common mode-to-mode link so far with the Go-Hi app?
The most common so far has been rail to e-bike.
Okay. And do you have any understanding about where that's happening and where they're headed?
Yeah, the busiest nodal point or hub on our e-bike network has typically been Inverness rail station. So that's probably driven it. Rail's well integrated into the app as well. We would like to see a build up though on that, and I think, you know, a bus has lagged, and I don't know if that's partly been our own promotion. So we're looking to try and see if we can pick that one up, because bus feels like a very natural fit. Bus to rail would certainly be an opportunity we'd like to see. And as we get further on with ferry involvement, at the moment we've just got the one ferry operator onboarded, but I think again those modes that naturally lend themselves to being part of a multimodal journey should drive that forward for us.
Let's hope. Thank you so much. It's great to see you as always. That's going to conclude this session right now. We are going to take a very short break, and we will be back at 2:00 with the session on the pandemic's impact on mobility.